Teachers of Reddit. What was the best excuse for being late? That turned out to be true.
Silent scan.
I was a kid. Physics. 11th grade. The day prior to this day, my neighbor passed away, and her son was a friend of mine, and also in this class. Terribly long story, but it was a suicide by hanging, and I was the one who found her. I had nightmares all night, and skipped the first half of school the next day. When my physics teacher saw me later, she asked where I was that morning. Before I could explain, she said, "That friend was looking for you," and concerned. He seemed more worried than he should have been, and was a little upset about you not being there. The guy's mom died, but he still went to class, and didn't tell anyone, but was worried about me. I couldn't tell her what had happened at that point, so I just said I overslept.
Silent scan.
I had a student. His father had died, and had not done any homework, or prep for the geography class. From what I heard, the teacher scolded him for not doing so, but the student didn't want to say anything, presumably sensitive issue. So his best friend shouted at the teacher, "Don't you have any shame? His father died last night." And the teacher said, "I don't care." There was an audible gasp, and I was in the next room. Needless to say, that teacher is no longer employed here.
Silent scan.
She had to take her sister to school, and drive her mom to rehab. She was always late to class, because her mom just wanted to sleep in. Problem was, if the mom was late, or did not go, she would have violated her probation, and gone to prison. I never marked her late. If she missed anything important, she could come in at lunch, or after school to make it up.
Silent scan.
Student here. I headed into school early, to get some studying done in the library, before my night class. I was one exit away, when I was caught in a 3-car accident. Most of the expressway afterwards was gridlock with only one lane left open. I did eventually make it into my lab class, 15 minutes late, with a few scrapes and bruises. My professor's reaction was simply, "Oh, that was you. Was he the one who hit you?"
Silent scan.
Told me he got pulled over by the cops for wobbly driving on his bike, and they thought he was drunk. Turned out, he was just dodging all the slugs on the street. Good man. Watching out for the sluggies. They like to traverse the walkway in front of my house at night, so I always have to shine a flashlight, so I don't step on them.
Silent scan.
When I was student teaching, I was late because there was bunch chickens in the middle of the road. They wouldn't move at all. This is in the middle of a city of 200,000 people. Freaking chickens. I finally get to school, and profusely apologized to my mentor teacher, and I told her why I was late, thinking it sounded ridiculous. She said, "Yeah, those chickens are F-diursis king holes. They surrounded my car in the McDonald's parking lot last year. Don't worry about. They were protesting the McChicken sandwich."
Silent scan.
I had a 6-year-old turn up late to her lesson, and blurt out, "Sorry I was late. I had to color in a bunny." Seems fair. Can't blame her. Coloring the bunny is an important job after all.
Silent scan.
MTV paid me $50 to fill my backpack with cement and carry it around for the day. I accepted that excuse. Student later regretted it, as a replacement backpack, and college textbooks far exceeded $50. But he got his moment of fame, and I didn't penalize him for his tardy. Gotta live a little. Added. Someone found a newspaper article on this. Turns out it was $200. He earned $100 for the first day, and $100 when he returned the next day. I remembered $50, but it was 19 years ago, so I was right to believe him. He still lost all his stuff, thanks cement, and I remember him telling me it wasn't worth it.
Silent scan.
We had an exam in my class, and the teacher got a message from a student, saying that he was going to be late, because his car had a flat tire. The student was known to party. The teacher didn't think it could be true, so as a joke, the teacher asked him to bring the tire back. He brought the flat tire back, in the middle of the exam. Needless to say, the professor didn't expect that. That student had been partying, drives to school, takes off tire, punctures it, and bobs your Auntie Mary.
Silent scan.
Literally today, child missed my first hour class. Note said, car accident on the way to school, and would be coming late. Kid comes for second hour. Has pictures on his phone of the rollover accident. WTF. Kid. Go home. Rest. Take care of yourself. Added. I have another one. Although this one happened to a classmate when we were in college training to be teachers. She missed a really important class. Came for just the last 10 minutes, or so because her neighbor knocked on her door, while in active labor asking for help. A little while before she was supposed to leave for class, classmate walked back to neighbor's house, with preggo neighbor, and delivered her baby in the living room while on the phone to 911. Paramedics came, and mom and baby were fine. But classmate needed to go home and shower change first, because she was covered in blood.
Silent scan.
The kid missed my first period class one morning, but was in school later that day. When I asked him why he hadn't arrived in time for my course, he said his cow was birthing its calf that morning, so he picked being in the barn over English. Made sense to me. His essays weren't going to win any ribbons at the county fair, but his calf could.
Silent scan.
When I was in college, my psych professor told us that the only excuse for being late was a funeral procession. Any other reason, you wouldn't be allowed to come in. A few weeks into the semester, I was headed from one building to another, which involved crossing the main road. Lo and behold, there was one very long funeral procession going by. I got a short video of it as proof, then stood on the sidewalk to let it go by. Unfortunately, the procession made me 5 minutes late to class. I knocked on the door, and the professor came over to tell me off. I showed her the video. Well, I'll be damned. Come on in.
Silent scan.
My best story ever. I taught in a hardcore inner city school. My student comes in at 10:30. I was like, dude, where were you? Oh, my bus was late. Yeah. No. Why would your bus be 3 hours late? Well, miss, there was a drive-by shooting. OMG, are you okay? Someone shot at the bus. No, ma'am. The kid shot a gun out of the bus. We got pulled over. The cops had to search everyone. The kid with the gun was literally the last kid to be searched. True story. You can't make this shit up.
Silent scan.
I apologize that I'm writing this on mobile, so there might be errors. I'm an English professor, and one year a pretty good student showed up without one of his 2 major term papers. He explained that his safe had been stolen by a contractor who was working on their house. His laptop was in the safe, and that's where his paper was. I genuinely believe him, because he'd been a really good student. Then over the next few weeks, he started to show up to class looking very tired. He said that he was on a hunt for the person who stole his safe, and he was spending late nights with his cousin, driving around looking for the guy, because they knew his van. Now, the student and his cousin were both recently back from tours in Iraq, and had seen combat experience. They wanted to find the guy to beat the shit out of him, and get the safe back because his wife's wedding ring was in the safe, as well as a bunch of cash. He rewrote the paper, and turned it in, apologetic that it wasn't up to his usual quality. But he still kept coming to class looking like he hadn't slept. After a little while he came very happy to my office hours, and he reported that he found the guy after a long search. That involved breaking into a meth den, shaking people down with baseball bats, and even bribing some prostitutes. He said that they found the guy's van at a Taco Bell, after getting a tip from a prostitute, and they cornered him, and waited for the police to come. I read in the news that he had in fact done a citizen's arrest, and stopped the guy at a Taco Bell, and that they ended up calling in the Secret Service, because he used the cash that he stole from the safe to buy a bunch of counterfeiting equipment. Secret Service apparently investigates counterfeiting, so the whole investigation happened because this guy who I dubbed the White Shaft tracked the scumbag down through the bad side of town late at night to get a wedding ring, some cash, and his research paper back. It all turned out to be true. He got the ring and the laptop back. I gladly accepted his original paper, and it got a much higher grade than the rewrite.
Silent scan.
This happened to me as a pupil. A very quiet, unassuming kid in our class came into German with about 5 minutes of the class left. We went to a Catholic school, and the teachers were all quite strict and intimidating. Classes were usually silent, especially in junior school. When this boy came into class at the end of the lesson that day, the door flew inwards with such force that the teacher gave an audible gasp. It had been raining heavily outside. His hair was plastered to his forehead. His blazer was dripping and sodden. He had mud caked into his trousers up to his knees, and he was breathing heavily. The teacher exclaimed, "Brendan, what happened?" We all stared up at him, in shocked silence. This quiet, unassuming little boy let out a big sigh and just said, "I took a shortcut," and went straight to his seat. That line became iconic in our school for years afterwards.
Silent scan.
Students told me he couldn't do the work because he was delivering oil from 3 p.m. until 11 p.m. in middle school. He wasn't lying. Dad has broken his both of shoulders and one clavicle, so his grandma and pregnant mom were switching off driving. Pretty sure he was doing most of it at night, and he was hooking the tanks to the oil. I called all his teachers and had his workload lightened, and got permission for him to come in an hour late each day, as he was providing the only income for his family of 8, as he was the oldest. Tutored him, so he could pass 7th grade. I paid cost of oil. Only for years until I moved out of the area. You're a goddamn hero.
Silent scan.
Had a student. Player on COT top 25 football team. Be late to a college midterm. As a note, we are in a metropolitan area. Emails me. And goes. I fully understand you think this is going to be a lie. But I found a guy unconscious in his car. Had to stop. And call 911. Be there soon. This was one. Where his was so wild. I couldn't fathom it being fake on some level. I was sitting there proctoring. And thinking how I was going to have to request a police report to verify. But the kicker is the guy made it to class. And finished the exam on time. And got an A from what I recall.
Silent scan.
I taught college English. A student suddenly stopped showing up. And wasn't responding to emails. I googled him. Just to make sure he hadn't died. Or something. And I found his mugshot. He was in jail.
Silent scan.
The best ones are strings of excuses. This one was particularly memorable. Missed alarm. Because the power went out during the night. He was unable to charge his phone. And his backup was a radio clock which was plugged into the wall. Woke up when a pipe burst. And flooded the house. The return of the power made the pumps come on a little too hard. Had to bail the house out before the water reached the books. Could still make it in time in the car. But a truck had overturned on the road. Waiting in traffic to go around it. Car overheated. And needed a tow. Since the phone hadn't charged. Had to walk to the overturned truck. To ask the traffic cops to call a tow instead. This walk was through cold mountain air. Still wet from mopping up the house. Caught a cold. Tow arrived. Used tow driver's phone to call a friend. Friend drove me to my class. And that's why I'm arriving. With only 15 minutes left on the exam clock. Sniffling. Dripping. And smelling like motor oil. He was allowed a makeup test when his cold passed.
Silent scan.